Welcome to Truett Church Network's first Pastors Roundtable. Many of you have tuned in previous weeks and months to Todd Talks, to the other webinars that we've offered. And this is a little something different where we'll have more than one guest. It's not necessarily, now we have expertise galore in this group, but we're looking at not necessarily authors or pontificators, but real pastors who are in the trenches doing this, and how just talking about our experiences and what we're going through, where we're gaining hope, where we're facing challenge in the midst of this, and differing perspectives, differing backgrounds, certainly different geographies. And so I'll do our introductions. Dr. Taylor Sandlin is senior pastor at Sugarland Baptist Church. And Taylor, you've been there 3.5 years, somewhere in there?
3 years, yeah, 3.5 now. So
3.5. Previously at Southland Baptist Church in San Angelo and First Baptist of Marlin. Carolyn Smith joins us from Wilton, Connecticut. And how long have you been at Wilton?
Same, just over 3 years.
Okay, that long. I thought it was a little bit shorter than that. And also a Truett grad. Husband's also a Truett grad. We're thankful that you're joining us from the frigid up north in the 60s today, so it's really tough there. Tony Miranda is down in South Texas, is the campus pastor. I got his title wrong on the promo at Stark College and Seminary in Corpus, and is also the pastor at Primera Iglesia Bautista in Robstown, Texas. Tony's the hardest working man in the business. To only have 2 jobs right now is actually down for Tony. He generally tries to keep 3 or 4. All of our guests are Truett grads. I think all of them are multiple Baylor grads, multiple degrees from Baylor. And so you've spent lots of money at Baylor. Now come back and help us, and we're thankful for that. Just to kind of kick us off and get us started here, what is, 2-part question, what is the weirdest thing COVID has required of you, funny, serious, or otherwise? And what are you most ready to be done with in this season? Anybody jump in?
Okay, I can start. The it's not funny at all, but really, most of us have done this, and I just find it absurd. If you look back and consider that in March, we were all going about our lives, our kids were going to school, and then one day we got an email from the school that said, by the way, tomorrow you're going to homeschool your children with your full-time job. Here's all you need. Good luck. I mean, the absurdity of that's phenomenal to me. So it's not necessarily funny, but it's something that we've all done. And I think the further along we go with this, we're going to look back and think, how did anybody think that was a good idea? How did anybody think that I could teach my kindergartner to read? I don't know how it happened, but he did, and I'm thankful. So,
yeah, what went from unthinkable to normal in church life was just crazy. How, like, oh man, you can't cancel the NCAA basketball tournament. Like, we can't do without that. We can't do church all online. And then now you're like, oh, we'll do this till January. It's fine. We got it. And yeah, just bizarre how quickly that happened.
yeah, and so many things have switched online, church stuff, but that is so in the middle of it. It's weirdness when my daughter's ballerina, and you do a dance recital all on Zoom, and grandparents trying to figure out how to get on, and some girls in studio, no parents allowed up there, but they did some from inside the studio, and then some girls are doing their pieces from their bedrooms, or one was from their little brother's nursery. This strangeness of that, and for our kids, they just roll with it, and so it's been impressive to watch them. But there's so many moments where you think, how in the world did we get right here?
Yes, I think that probably one of the strangest things for pastors is to preach in front of the camera. Well, many had that experience before, but not all of us. So it was kind of strange, unusual to preach just to an electronic device instead of the whole congregation. And later in time, as we go to the church, we preach to the empty church. So it's also kind of something very, very unusual for me. One of the things that I want to share with you all is one of the funeral service that I conducted during this time of COVID. also it was kind of out of normal because it was just the funeral home, almost empty, only 5 people there, and of course the body of the deceased. So it was kind of very, very, very strange to me. But well, God was working on that process, and I believe not only for me, but for all of the pastors, God gave us the understanding we need at that time.
You know, the thing I'm ready to be rid of is just only life online. You know, it's we're managing, but online becomes so focused on kind of the just bare bones of what you need to get done. So I think from a staff perspective, you know, everybody has staff meetings. Staff meetings are kind of almost necessary evils. We had a tradition in our church of going to lunch after staff meeting as a staff. And, you know, so no matter what kind of disagreement you had in staff meeting, lunch with people and remember they're real people that you love and you like working with. And, you know, with that being gone during this season, it's just those things that cushion life, those hallway conversations, those moments of just where you're not working, you're just living together. You know, I just am ready for a day where there's some sort of balance between those. I love work, but when work is all you do, it's the only interactions you have with people. You know, it just makes life a lot harder. And so I'm ready to be done with, you know, Zoom only staff interactions.
What else? What else? Tony, Caroline, what are y'all ready to be done with?
You're muted, Tony.
I think you're muted, Tony.
Yeah, in the beginning of the pandemic, early March, beginning April, we have in our mind probably an estimated time for us, in our minds at least, about 2 or 3 months that this will be past 2 or 3 months after. So I think we are all in the same channel. But after the things were going and the COVID was increasing instead of decreasing, probably this is one of the things that we are tired that we don't know. So it's this kind of feeling of uncertainty that we don't know when this is gonna end. And also it's kind of difficult to plan for the future. In the near future even, for instance, the month of November, December, we will not know how the things are gonna be in those months. So probably this is kind of what is kind of tired for many of us, that we need to plan and we don't know what it's gonna be look like. But we trust in God. We trust God that everything's gonna be fine for us.
And you plan and then it changes and you've got to scrap the plan and then you plan and you've got to scrap that plan. And I know that's been tiring for many of not even knowing what we're aiming for sometimes because of how quickly things have changed.
I'm tired of not having the kids. And I don't mean my personal kids. I just mean children programming. We always had lots of children in the service, and we had children's time together and Sunday school for the kids. And I'm done with anything related to limiting our interaction and time with kids. You know, even putting masks on them, sending them to school. I'm ready for life, for involvement with kids to be back to normal.
Yeah, that's a fact. I know our kids are doing Zoom Sunday schools and things, and man, I appreciate those leaders pouring so much into that. One of them dropped off last night like a bag of supplies for the next 2 weeks of Sunday school and mission stuff and it's wonderful. But boy, it's just not the same. And though I peek in every so often at like 8-year-old Sunday school on Zoom, and everybody's upside down and in space and everything else, you know, and you're like, oh, bless those teachers trying to do that and ready to get them under one roof. So as pastors then, I mean, obviously we'll talk about fatigue and we'll talk about challenge, and those that are following, I mean, if you have questions or follow-ups or anything that's said, put it in the chat and we'll do our best to work those in. Make sure those kind of go to the panelists and to everybody. What has been the biggest pastoral leadership challenge you've faced to keep your church moving forward through this time? What's the biggest challenges you faced or challenge?
Well, at least for me, I can identify 2 main different challenges. Number one is that not all of the members of the church has the same level of knowledge in using technology. So for instance, youth people, for them it's easier, of course, because they are involved in this interaction with social media. But for some others, probably the older generation, is kind of difficult even to respond a text. I have some members of the church that they don't respond text because they don't know, and they are waiting for someone else to help. So undoubtedly, this is one of the greatest challenges. The use of technology has been a difficult thing for us. And other is more about the perspective that they have for COVID. So for instance, in the decision, as we made a decision of opening the church or not opening the church, we have the two sides, you know, this kind of polarized thing that has been in the world, not only in the community, but in the nation and the world, probably about it is appropriate now to open the church or not. And we have these two perspectives. One perspective is that it doesn't matter, nothing is going to happen. If you can go to the store, what is the problem to go to the church and worship together? And on the other hand, we have the people who are more vulnerable, and you don't want to put in risk those people, children, elders. So it's kind of this kind of going and back with some arguments, and making a decision has been very, very hard.
I would totally second that. The biggest challenge is helping people to remember that we, like Taylor said earlier, we love each other and we care for each other. And the hard thing about being a pastor during that time is knowing that no matter what decision you make, you're going to have half the people mad. Either way. At least, right?
Yeah, in different ways too. I mean, I know when I was pastoring, I pretty much knew where my criticisms were going to come from. It was going to come from one side, or not sides of issues, just right. I kind of knew where it was coming from. This is one of those middle things where the same decision gets criticism from multiple sides simultaneously. And I bet it's been jarring probably to, the disjointedness of it.
Yeah, you know, and it's right, we're all working with really incomplete information. I mean, this is something none of us knew about, you know, a year ago. And so trying to, just like everybody else, we're not the only people having to do this, you know, sift through types of information that we're not used to evaluating. You know, I mean, I've become intimately, you know, aware of course, the Texas Medical Center here in Houston, you know, puts out numbers for our area, and trying to figure out, well, what are the numbers that I need to pay attention to? How do you translate that and make a decision that your conscience is good with, but then knowing, you know, there are lots of other dynamics for people, and you know, it's I think the lack of personal touch makes it more difficult. You know, when people know you love them, they trust you more, and it's harder for people to know we love them, because I think of the difficulty of, you know, on a Sunday morning, I can probably connect with 25 to 30 families just in the hallway, just walking around, you know, checking on them, you know, ask them how they're doing. And to make that many phone calls per week means I don't do anything else. And so there's been a huge decrease in the number of personal touches that I can make. And I think long term that affects the health of the church and your ministry and how people see you. And even though people know you can't do that, there's still that. Inevitably people are going to fall through the cracks because we don't see them every week, and they are not connecting online, and it's a lot more difficult to know if they've dropped off for a few weeks. And so for me, just that pastoral care is a huge challenge of how do you, I feel like we're doing the best we can, but it still doesn't feel like enough most days.
Can y'all maybe just pinpoint quickly what level of physical engagement y'all are at, right? Are you back in person, some not back at all? There's probably differences between you, just so we kind of know what your church is doing. Where are your churches on that spectrum right now?
We're back in on Sunday morning. We're probably running about 20% of our pre-COVID attendance. So doing both online and in person. We've just done that for a few weeks now. No small groups yet.
We are back in person, but only outside, distanced, masked, no singing, which I thought a lot of people would have a problem with, but I've had, you know, there's been great feedback. They were just so thankful to be back together that there wasn't, you know, the complaints about that. So the problem is when the weather is not cooperating, which has only happened twice, but it will be soon. Like you were saying about what we're going to do come Advent, come November, December, it's going to change because we go inside for weather. And when that happens, right now we run about 60% for the courtyard, which is fantastic. When we're inside those days, we don't even have 10 people. So.
And are you doing online as well, streaming something or recording something?
Streaming online, which, you know, that's the other frustrating piece, which I know we'll get to. But I mean, I thought I had this, you know, thought that once we could come back to in-person worship, I could drop that because it's a great thing to have added. We needed to, but it's so much on me. And but right now it's just double. We do the in-person and it's still streaming. Wednesday night is still streaming. It's on Zoom. We're not in person for Wednesday.
I think the streaming's here, period. End of sentence. I mean, I think for most of us, particularly for the long or the short-term, long future, you know, right, a year or so, it's just, we're going to have some that are going to need it. And that's it's a lot to grapple with. Tony, what about y'all?
Well, we are meeting now only for Sunday service in the morning, but not all the full capacity, probably around 30% of the capacity. And I try to be very careful, especially because the Hispanic population is one that has been most affected by the COVID. So I don't want to push my congregation, and I don't want to be pushed neither for other people making pressure. So it's kind of hard to find a balance, but for now, no other activities, only we have the Sunday service and it's shorter in time. The worship time is shorter as well. The preaching is also streamed through Facebook and everything, but for now is the only in-person ministry that we have.
Well, and measuring the online engagement to know, like, all right, Facebook says however many views. How many people is that? How many, you know, measuring that, what percentage is still engaged and how are they engaged and when are they engaged? That's tricky, man. It's hard to get a picture of that, I know. So,
I just multiplied times 15. We're having great attendance.
That's good. That's good. That's good pastoral jujitsu right there. I like it. That's the voice of experience. So I'm just going to assume you're experiencing some fatigue. To ask you to be on, I didn't like poll and say, okay, these are the 3 tiredest pastors. Let's get them on. You're just regular good pastors, which means you're probably experiencing some fatigue right now, which has been, we've been talked about. What's your experience of that been? I mean, some, like, how are you dealing with it? But then just what does it feel like to be a pastor 6 months into this with an indefinite future?
I am tired. I'm not nearly as tired as I was, and there's reason for that. But when we first started, Taylor's a little more advanced and thoughtful than I am, and I did think that I could contact everybody and that I should, but especially since we weren't meeting in person. So I would, you know, go through the whole thing online. Then I had to figure out how to do all the media stuff, which is a whole nother thing. And then I would go through the directory and I'd divide it up. I'd do half one week and half the other week because I wanted to make contact with everybody. I needed to know how they were feeling about what was going on and if they were okay. We were in a very high risk area at the time. We had several people in the congregation that contracted it quite quickly. And we had ICU nurses as well working in the congregation. So just really needing to kind of connect with people and see how they were doing. But adding on to that, trying to change, as everybody else was, trying to change the way we were doing things, being sure that everybody was being reached somehow, you know, taking things to the kids and meeting with the deacons and whatever we could do, switching everything to online. And I was so done and exhausted, and I'm very good. I am very good about taking my days off, but I was working 7 days a week. No way of getting around that. And I was doing that through May. And then we came up on June, and our church already has a practice of summer Sabbath that I instituted when I came. We don't do Sunday school. We don't have enough attendance. We don't have teachers around. People are on holiday at their holiday homes. So I maintained summer Sabbath. We did not we dropped any of the extra, the Wednesday nights, any of those things that we would have dropped anyway, but people didn't want to because they were trapped in their houses. I did it for me because I knew that I could not push through. And so that completely revived me. I was able to get a little bit of space and time to recuperate. I mean, we obviously still had our Sunday worship. We were still doing in person at that point, you know, all of these things, but all that extra stuff that I had added on, I cut out for part of June, all of July and August, and then picked up again in September. And I feel so much more energized by doing that.
That's great. That's wise.
Yeah, also for my congregation, it has been kind of difficult this time. I think for all the congregations, we have not prepared to face this challenge. So encouraging others has been the daily bread. I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, I sent texts every morning to all the members, just with a Bible verse, trust the Lord, God is with us, God has the control. And then phone conversations as well, as Carolyn mentioned, it's very important to be in touch with everyone in one way or other. And well, probably for pastors, I identify when a pastor said, this is the time that I had been more busy, because it's a double effort, not only prepare the sermon and lead in the congregation, but also dealing with technology issues. I remember that in one of the Sunday services that were transmitted through Facebook, social media, and everything, I had recorded everything and I thought everything was fine, but at the very last minute, the button didn't work. I don't know why. So it was so frustrating. And I know that if a pastor is listening to me right now, how identify with those issues. So that is the way that probably we are kind of tired dealing with technological things. But at the same time, personally, I found rest, of course, in the Lord. Okay, so this is something that will never change. Our source, our peace, our grace comes from the Lord. So meditating on the word of the Lord. Also finding physical resting is also important for a pastor. Having friends is something important. Talking with other pastors, we are on the same boat, so we will understand what is going on. So this is an advice because we are physical restricted. That doesn't mean that we are social or spiritual restricted. Mm-hmm. So we can find advice on others as well. So I think that's important, and always seeing every event in life from the Romans 8:28 perspective, that everything has a plan according to the will of God. If we love Him, God has a plan. So that's probably one of the main verses in my ministry that have been of a lot of blessing.
I think you're right that every pastor knows what it's like for the button not to work, or the cord not to work, or something. I was preaching 3 weeks ago, and I mean, I was like 17 and a half minutes into my 20 minutes, and the camera just went out, or the browser crashed. And so like I finished, because the tech people are all looking at everything, and they didn't give me like the stop. So I just finished my sermon, and they're like, hey, you need to pick up here and redo this. Man, I had 17 minutes head of steam, baby. Like I can't pick that anyway, but we got it done. But it was some interesting times.
Yeah. You know, it's I have the advantage of having a lot of staff, and so some of these things that don't land on my plate, which is nice. I certainly have been mindful of those of you who are having to do a lot more things. I don't have to ever figure out a technology something. People are doing that for me. It doesn't mean we all have to kind of wait. I think one of the hardest things has been the fact that especially in the spring, it just felt like we were making huge decisions every single day. And, that just weighs on you. For me, and I don't want to get into too much confessional here. There was another season of my ministry life, really right after I got here, that we had Hurricane Harvey. I had a lot of staff departures, which happens sometimes in pastoral transitions. Just in that season, there were months there where it just felt like a crisis mode. And really did probably, there's no really to it. I did not take care of myself physically, and I really paid for that. Ended up in the hospital briefly, with really what I came to learn were just some anxiety issues, really panic attacks and things like that, but manifesting themselves physically in my body. And, I had friends tell me in that season, hey, you got to rest, you got to take days off, you got to exercise, all the things we hear that we know we're supposed to do. And I just, like most of us, was like, well, I'll do all that after I get out of this season. And I didn't make it out of the season without really some actual issues in my life. And so since then, I've really put in some practices of regular exercise and checking in with some folks on a regular basis. And, when things are going easy, you don't really ever know if those things are paying dividends. This has been a very high stress season, and I've experienced fatigue like everybody. I've had moments where I, want to just not do this anymore. But I haven't experienced the same level of kind of physically hitting my limit that I did in a previous season. And in many parts, I think it's because of the exercise, the checking in with folks, of just remembering, everything doesn't depend on me. I am not the savior of the world, and I don't have to save the world. And so just a word of both really encouragement to folks, kind of warning and encouragement. You really can hit a physical limit that causes some real serious issues. I've been there, and it really, some basic things like exercise do make a big difference in our lives. Even though I did not listen to that until it really cost me.
Carolyn, what are you? I think that's turned us well to how we're combating some of the fatigue that we're experiencing. You spoke a little bit about that already, just with summer and some things, but any of you want to just kind of add anything onto that of what you have found, what friends are doing that it seems effective to just, get some energy to combat what we're facing?
I also exercise every day, and I've upped that from 3 to 4 times a week to 6 times a week. The only day I don't is Sunday. I have people that I check in with, but I always have, and I'm thankful for that. And I've always exercised as well, but I've just, like I said, increased that, put more routine in, so that I exercise first thing, and then my day kind of has a flow from there. But another thing that I've never done before, because I was always, like I said, very good about taking my days off and having my time structured. I 2 days ago on Monday, I just couldn't push any further. I was tired. I took a couple hours. I would never have done that before, but I'm just giving myself a bit of permission to say, if I'm going to be able to be there for somebody else, I need this 2 hours, and just recognizing that I being more patient with myself. I have been very good about structuring and taking the time and self-care. However, this requires more exercise, more breaks during the week, not just waiting till my day's off, and going ahead and taking the time. So if you need permission received. We've got to do it. We've all got to do it, or you cannot be here for people.
I did my D-Min project on Sabbath for clergy. And, I've talked about that a lot on this and other things. And so some of you are probably sick of hearing about it. But one of the things we found, of the 9 pastors that participated, they're spread out on age group, differing ethnicities, differing sizes of churches, differing family stages. And it was a very different group, or diverse group. All of them said their church, when they were kind of boiled down to it, and we got into it, their church wanted them to take more time off than they did. Now, there are exceptions to that, but that was pretty fascinating to kind of be a confession of, I think most of our churches do want, even when they want you to show up to every hospital visit and do everything, they want that too, but they also do want your good. And finding that balance of responsibility and then self-permission to say, that's what COVID's done for me. Working from home, being dad, husband, employee, minister, all simultaneously throughout the day, right? Where I couldn't separate out going to the office or going to the church. Realize, I can go on a walk with my kids and then still get a lot done. Where I know other healthier pastors than I was, they'd go to a movie occasionally, or they'd pick up their kids every day from school. And I would say, there's no way you can do that. I don't get how you do that. It's helped me give permission, kind of like you said, to take some little breaks here and there. You work hard, you work a lot, you work sometimes 7 days a week. That requires it often 6 days a week. But we can have these breaks that give life and allow us to breathe a little bit. But yeah, I think that helps. And knowing those physical, spiritual, emotional limits that we all come up against, that I think a lot of us just want to push through them. That's really helpful. I mean, y'all are healthy pastors, and it's good to have your stories.
But Matt, that's the thing you said, to push through. And I think that's where we all started. We thought we could just push through, and then it just kind of kept going. And so it does require stopping and taking reassessing where you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm one of these people that believes everything can come back to a quote from The Godfather, probably at some point, right? You can work it in. And so, there you have the peacetime consigliere and the wartime consigliere. And so there's somewhat like peacetime, not wartime, but like conflict time, stress time. But that's a false dichotomy, right? Like if we have to practice in the regular, more even times, if those things exist, those practices are what carry us through the conflict and stress. I tell that to students all the time. So many seminarians are ready to start practicing their formation once they get in the pastorate or the church post-seminary, because they think that's going to be lighter. And you go, well, that's different stress, but it isn't easier. I mean, it's not, I don't think many people are looking back, and saying, oh boy, life was so much less stressful when I was a student. And yes, but it's same for to practice these things regularly so that it carries us through the most difficult times. So early on in pandemic, Taylor preached a sermon on this that was excellent. And it's picked up a Peter Drucker quote that I think's been used a lot of never waste a crisis. And I think we were talking about, I know I was, and pontificators talking about, and there's some things that in this crisis that may be kind of like separating the wheat from the chaff. There's some things we might let go of and some new practices. And though this is going to be difficult, it may leave some real positive things for the church. That's when we thought this will be over by May 15th, right? This won't continue till 2021. In your opinion, are there still some real positive things the church can learn and pastors can learn from this? Or has it gone on so long and our anxiety's gotten so high that no, we just need to snap back to normal when this is over? What are your thoughts?
Well, yes, we can identify, of course, many blessings or many positive things from the pandemic. First of all, probably this was a popular one in the beginning of the pandemic, that many people has been reached through technology, through Facebook, YouTube, and other kinds of social media that in other way would never be reached. So more people have been exposed to the gospel message because of the pandemic. So undoubtedly, this is something great that came because of the pandemic. Also technology, as we mentioned it, now we know a little bit more about that. We know more about how to work using the best camera, the best mic, the best techniques. So I can say from my experience that I have grown a lot in that aspect using technology. And this is something that probably will stay after the pandemic goes. This is going to stay and will be with us probably forever in the church. So these are some good points. But as some of you mentioned in the beginning of the pandemic, we believe that this will be end in 2 or 3 months and has not ended yet. So probably that's why we are start thinking, is this an awakening, or it is not necessarily? Well, depending on the perspective that you see, I try to see everything from from the good perspective instead from the negative perspective. So I believe that God has a plan. And the good thing for us is that the message has not changed. The message is the same that we proclaim. So the media is the different way, the format, the method is different, but the message is the same. Also, the mission for the church is the same one. So we can proclaim the same message based on the scripture, Matthew 28, verse 19, go make disciples. So that has not changed. So I don't see a negative aspect here. And also the identity of the church has not changed neither. So we are the same. We are the holy people, the holy nation, the real priesthood. And that will not change because of the pandemic. So we can take many good, positive things out of the conflict, out of the anxiety. And also, of course, the grace of God is always available for us if we need. I believe it's in time of trials, in time of conflicts, when God manifests His grace to us. And as Apostle Paul says, my grace is sufficient. God said to me, my grace is sufficient. So I believe in the middle of conflict, we can count many blessings.
Good word.
Yeah, obviously we've learned some things online, like Tony said. I think a lot of those will pay dividends. In a big city like ours, there's just so many people who are socially isolated, and they're connecting online in ways they did not before. And I think that you think of homebound members. I think we're going to do better ministry to them after this than we did before, because of some of the things we've learned. I think from a preaching standpoint, it's honestly, sometimes it's hard to communicate the gospel message to middle-class, secure people. But there are no longer any secure people. We are all been, our lives have been tossed upside down. And so in many ways, I found my preaching to have kind of a new vibrancy just because of the challenge of the moment. And I don't think that goes away the day we come back to church. The ramifications of this are going to be years in the kind of unraveling. And so I think the opportunity, like Tony said, for just some renewed gospel preaching to people who are listening because of the challenges in their life, that none of us would necessarily sign up for that. Like if we got to back up the clock, like I don't vote for this at all. But I certainly think, God can redeem those things in my own life, right? It's that challenge of how many things do you say you depend upon God, but really I depend upon a lot of other things. And it's only when those things are stripped away that I have to go, okay, I actually believe what I preach. So let's put that into practice day to day.
Good word.
Yeah, I think that the church was already in a time of transition, and this is kind of, while some people might have been holding on and not wanting to and not willing to take those steps to make that transition happen, this has forced it. This has really forced people's hands, and I do see a positive outcome in this. Yes, the media, yes, the outreach, all those things, but what I find the most hope in is the way life was good. It was normal. There were certain things you could expect. All that was thrown up in the air, and within a matter of days, everybody adapted. Everybody. My kids are doing piano lessons online on Zoom. I'm holding an iPad up. We have Sunday school on Zoom. We have children's bags being delivered, just like you, Matt, to families' home. People adapted within a matter of days to a situation that we knew we had to adapt for survival. So that's where I find my greatest hope, is that the church was already in a time of transition and uncertainty, and people were concerned about where we're headed and what things look like. And we've shown that the church survives because what Daniel has said, or what Tony said, is that the message did not change. We just had to adapt to our situation, which we already needed to have done. And so what we're looking at right now is new wine skins. Are we just going to dump this wine in the old wineskins once things go back to normal, if that ever happens? Or are we going to figure out what that new wine and the new wineskins really are? Because the wine, all things new, that's the message. But what are our wineskins? And if we can figure that out, if we can work together and come to a way of putting that together, then I think we'll all be better off. And that's my hope.
Man, y'all can be my pastors any day. This is great. I mean, this is encouraging to me because I think just personally and I watch now we're all following everybody on Facebook, right? So, I mean, my Facebook notifications on Sunday morning are huge because everybody's going live, right? East Coast, West Coast, Central. And so it's fun. I get to see a lot of you preach and pick parts of your services. And early on, I think we were focusing a lot on, hey, the mission is still the same. The ministry, the call is still the same. We just have to do it differently. As it's gone on, I think the anxiety, and then you add political season, right? You add the racial unrest and need for racial healing and so many other things. Boy, to get back to keep speaking that message, hey, the church is not broken. Culture is not, like, we're okay. There's the same mission. I think that's just such a message. Yeah. I'm encouraged by you all sharing that, and I hope your churches are as well, even as it's difficult and anxiety is going to creep up, and that's the law of the family system, right? It's going to keep coming back, and we have to de-escalate and be non-anxious and keep us focused on the main thing. Final question. I mean, what would your encouragement be to our fellow pastors, brothers and sisters listening? Where, I mean, so much of what we're reading, right? Those that I call the pontificators, like myself, who likes to consider a pastor, but you're not doing it right now. One pastor friend said, if I hear one more person say, if I were a pastor, he said, I'm going to go crazy. So I'm trying not to do that. But I mean, Tom Rainer, so many have written about, and we're experiencing right now in Exodus, the past few weeks, 2 weeks really, pastors resigning, ministers resigning, some with no place to go, some just saying, I think I can do this. I just can't do it with these people anymore. And just a lot of people just reporting, considering getting out like they never have before. What would your encouragement be to those with extreme fatigue right now?
I'd like to hear from Taylor on that, because of what you spoke to earlier. I think that fits perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to judge anybody for leaving, honestly. You know, there are places where we are broken and need a season of healing, and sometimes that requires stepping away a little bit. That being said, you know, seasons do pass. You know, I know that's hard to say in the middle of this. This is such a slow-moving crisis that it's hard to see the end. You know, we had kind of a morbid moment of laughter in one of our staff meetings because we were, you know, talking about Hurricane Laura coming close and what, you know, we're going to have to cancel services. And that, of course, reminded us of Hurricane Harvey. And we're like, who of us ever would have thought that Hurricane Harvey would feel like a small crisis at this point? You know, but that it still reminds us that, you know, crises pass. And, you know, I think the challenge is to ask for help. You know, sometimes, again, I think we probably think our church is not as willing to give us help as they might be if we just ask for it. And, you know, if you're thinking of leaving and you're silent about that, you know, you don't, you know, if you ask for help out loud and they say no, well, you're kind of in the same place. But if you ask for help out loud and they say yes, you might be able to redeem a difficult moment. And, you know, right, one of the challenges is remembering pastors aren't the only people in this boat. Our church people are in this boat, and they sometimes in their jobs face just as many challenges as we do. And, you know, so that might make them sympathetic if we're willing to just admit we need help, because some of them need help. So, you know, there's no easy way out of that other than just a warning that you really can hit a limit. I think, you know, Caroline said this well. As a young man, I just always thought I could work a little harder and it would work out. And I got to be about 40 and that didn't work anymore. I couldn't work hard enough to work some things out. And I had to learn to let go of some things, and I had to learn to take care of myself better, and just recognize, next Sunday will come around. I don't have to figure out everything this Sunday. There's going to be another one, and we'll get to talk about the gospel again. And, one of the things for me is just letting go of a lot of goals, right? What do goals even look like this season? And, we're reading the Bible through this fall in our church just as right? We could do that, right? There's a lot of things we can't do, but we can read our Bibles and talking about it. And I was reminded of Moses. He doesn't get to go in the promised land. And that seems like a terrible defeat. And yet at the end of Deuteronomy, it's not seen as a defeat. It still talks about the fact that Moses was this phenomenal person who saw God face to face. And I wonder, what's the goal of my life? To build a big, successful church, or to see God face to face? I could really never achieve any of my goals. And if I see God face to face, it will be enough. And so, right, that should always be our goal. But, we have so many other things that we put in there. And this season's just stripped away all those secondary goals for me. So it's had to remind me, can God be enough? That's what I preach every single week, that God is enough. So can I actually live that out? And again, I don't want to judge anybody who steps down from their position. Just because you find yourself at a place where you need to do that doesn't mean God isn't enough for you. I think we can be hypercritical of pastors sometimes who step down, when sometimes for their family and their own well-being, they need to do that.
Good word. Caroline, Tony, any final thoughts to add on to that?
Yes, good work, Pastor Taylor. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, here at the school, someone recently preached this kind of message: never resign on Monday. Probably you have heard that. And I think it's true, because, after a bad experience on Sunday, whatever this experience may be, we are sometimes driven by our emotions. And on Monday is when all these explode, right? So I understand that this has tested some of the ministries, some of the churches, some of our best efforts. But the test of the trial, the calling is not defined by the test. Okay, so this is a different thing. So my advice is, don't be driven by your emotions in making a decision if you want to quit. But it's about your calling, it's about your conviction, it's about what the Holy Spirit is leading you. This is a test, this is a trial as any other. Probably you have faced different trials in your life from different nature. This is one of those. Is having more impact in some churches than in others, in some ministries than in others, some pastors than in others. But at the end of the day, this is a test. And remember that all of the trials are temporary. So these will be, and we don't know when, but these will going to have an end. So during this time, try to do the best, not serving men, but serving God. This is important. I know it's difficult. I will not judge neither if someone wants to quit because the test is so hard. You can take a rest if you want, but my word of encouragement is, don't be driven by your emotions, because this can vary very, very soon. But be confident that you have been called by God, and God, the Lord is with us in good times and in bad times. So you just keep on. One of my favorite verses is Philippians 4, all chapter 4, rejoice in the Lord, going to the goal, all of that. So when you have this kind of feelings, go through the scripture, go to God, and God will give you the same answer. I'm your God, you are my servant, depend only on me, and I will feed you. So this is my word of advice. Keep on, keep going, keep pushing. Not on your own strength, but rest in God, and God will provide.
Preach it all, Tony. Good word, buddy.
Thank you, Matt.
I would just say grace, Matt. I mean, grant yourself the same grace that you grant everybody else, and, know that it's yours. Receive receive the grace of God. May the grace of Christ our Savior, the love of God our Father, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be yours in this time.
I listened to a podcast a while back of John Ortberg quoting Dallas Willard, where he talks about as Christians, we burn grace like jet fuel. And he said the only way we get through, he said we talk about grace often for others, but the only way we get through any day, particularly in ministry, is burning the grace of God like jet fuel. And it's anyway, it was, that image has just struck with me of like, man, we need it every minute, every day, and it's how we get through. Y'all, thank you for taking time. I know y'all are busy. Obviously, we're talking about that and a lot going on. Thank you for the practices you've put in place to be healthy and care for your churches and your families and yourself. I have been encouraged by this just personally, and I know several others have left messages to that extent. For those watching or for our panelists, you'll get an email this afternoon. We're launching covenant groups. Some of you that went to Truett, you've been in a covenant group. If you have a staff and you're looking like, hey, we need some new material to walk through formation together. If you have a group of ministers with whom you meet that you might like some weekly materials that you can study together, or, I mean, you're lonely and you're tired, or you just want a new group of ministers to meet with, to read the Word of God, to pray together and encourage one another through this season, we can send you the material to your group, or we can put you in a group based on geography, generally where you are, based on your role in ministry. So you can get an email this afternoon if you're an alumni of Truett or on the Truett Church Network list. If you would like groups to meet with to help make it through this time and thrive, we want to help with that. And so look for that, just as we need groups. We all need more friends, particularly in this season, and we want to step into that if we can. And so, y'all, thank you so much. Those that are watching on Facebook and on Zoom, thank you. We'll do this again in a couple weeks, but y'all have a great day.